So good afternoon, and today what we are going to do is first complete the theory, let's say, about need finding with two methods that are actually the ones that we are going to ask you in assignment 1. And that's lecture, so it's video recorded. Then after this, I will present assignment number 1. That will be video recorded as well. And then we will do an exercise together in the last hour about need finding in preparation to what you are going to do on Wednesday in the lab. And that, since it's an exercise, will not be video recorded, okay? So, but let's start from this. So last time we started to talk about need finding, what is a need, and how to do observations. Today we continue with other two methods. One is interviews, and one is contextual inquiry. And interviews will be mainly what you will need to do in assignment 1. So go talk with people and understand things, but not just talk with people randomly, but talk with people in a way that is with purpose and in a proper way, in a proper method. So interview. Let me start saying that there are many forms of interviews. Two are the main forms. One are, let's say, one-to-one interviews, mostly done in person. One-to-one or small groups interviews, most of the time done in person. And the other one are surveys, are questionnaire, large-scale, online or on paper questionnaire to fill out. So in-person interview, but still are under the umbrella term of interviews. So interviews could be one-on-one. I'm asking question to him, and he's replying, and we have a conversation one-on-one. Or in the form of focus group. I ask question to 5 of you, and the 5 of you reply, and then together in the same room in the same moment. But still is an interview. Focus group are more complicated to handle, to manage, but which question you ask, how you ask them is the same. What changes the capability of the person who do the interview to balance in a focus group, for instance, that everyone speaks and not to have one person talking and the other 4, let's say, stay quiet, stay silent. So that's one distinction of the interview. The other distinction that is more, is not one or the other, but could be also something in the middle, is whether the interview is structured or unstructured, with something in the middle that is semi-structured. What it means? A structured interviews means that I prepare the questions to ask and will only ask those questions. No matter what. I prepare 10 questions, I ask these 10 questions. That's it. It's fully structured. There is a structure, I follow the structure. On the other side, unstructured interviews are the one where I prepare 0 questions and I just go with the mood, or maybe just prepare one initial prompt, an initial sentence, and then I will go as the conversation moves. That's fully unstructured. And then, of course, there is the middle layer that is semi-structured, in which I prepare some questions as in the structured way, but if there is the opportunity, if there is the chance, if there is something interesting to explore, I just come up with a question in that moment that was not prepared before, and that will make it a little bit more unstructured than the other one. And in assignment 1, we will ask you to do a semi-structured interview. So you have to prepare something, but you should be open to follow-up questions, to whatever it happens in the conversation. And in assignment 1, we will ask you to do one-to-one interviews, not focus group, because they are more complex. Interviews are more time demanding and also give you more in-depth knowledge than surveys that instead are fast, more superficial. They only are structured because you have a set of questions with predefined possible answer, and you deliver those questions to 1,000, 1 million people, so a large number of people to reach out via web or via paper. So this is the main distinction, but how you build questions is common between the two forms of interviews. Just to remind you, let's keep in mind that people typically, when asked directly, don't know what they want explicitly, because they will tell you either what you like to hear. So if you're going to talk about new way to do X, they will likely say, oh yes, it's a good idea, the one that you propose. Or they will have the language to express things in their own style, their own knowledge, according to what they know. They are not the designers, they are not developers, they're not creators, so they can only speak of things they know. And they also take their current context for granted. And it's your duty to go deep into that and understand what's behind that. So keep this in mind. And to do an interview, the first step is to choose who to interview. So you should pick people that are representative of target users, all people potentially representative of target users. So if you are doing something, I don't know, for university students, the target so let's say that you want to do something for Politecnico students in classroom, like this. Which are the target users? Which is everyone. Yes, but the target user are not everyone in the class. The stakeholder are everyone in the class, but the target users are the students, because you want to do something for the students. They are the target user. They are the immediate user, the one that you will do something for them. The stakeholders, instead, are not only students, but also everyone in the class. For instance, teachers, for instance, staff that manage classroom. So these are the other stakeholders that give you important information complementary to what the students can tell you. So the goal is to find the target users and other kind of interesting user to recruit, talk with. If you cannot, because in practice maybe it's not always possible to recruit people of a target system, of a target domain, you can use also user of a similar system, of a similar domain as a proxy. And for something that is entirely new, could be also not non-user, someone that is again similar age, similar expertise, but not a direct user because they didn't exist. They don't exist because it's something so new you don't have them. And when you choose participant, when you involve participants, is practice to give something back to these participants. Could be incentive, could be a small gift, could be motivation, could be something. From a coffee to the vending machine to something more expensive and more maybe useful. So that's something to maintain, typically done to maintain a good level of participation. So to execute the interviews, imagining that you created the questions and find out people, you will, of course, need to schedule a time and place that is comfortable for the users, not really for you. Then you have to introduce yourself, explain why you are conducting this interview, and reminding them that you are not testing them. It's not a questionnaire, it's not a test that you gave a grade after. It's just a conversation, so they are actually helping you. So that is the mood. And interviews moves like a story. Good interviews moves like a story. You start with an open-ended, unbiased questions. How does story start? Story like children's stories start. Once upon a time, what's happened once upon a time? There was something, and this is the contest, the beast. There was something, this is the contest. So you, in a story, you start large. You start introducing the character, and then you move to what's happening, and then in the end, so you shrink the story. You start, oh, there was a castle, the beast, and this happened, and in 10 years this happened, so you start large. And then you move towards, okay, but there was these things that happened, this is this character, this other character, and then in the end, something happened. And you close the narration with something that happens. So interviews follow a similar line of thought. You start large. Once upon a time, there was a castle and a beast and some people, and they were terrified. And then you move to closer to your point. So you start with open-ended questions on the topic, large, and then ask the question, give people space and time to answer, and then you proceed and you move with more laser-focused question as you proceed. And if the people say something interesting in answering your structured question, you can follow up with another question that is structured or not to go deep dive into the topic. So I ask you something, you reply, and instead of moving to the next question, I will ask a clarification, ask something to go deep in what you just replied to me. That's called the follow-up question. So guidelines for questions. Structured questions are easier to process. Unstructured questions solicit more comments. What means structured question? A structured question is from 1 to 5, where 1 is too hot and 5 is too cold. What's the temperature of this room? That's structured. You give a scale, you give value to a scale, and they can reply 1, 2, 3, whatever. Unstructured questions are more open questions. What do you think about? Tell me something about. So of course, the first one are easier to process because everyone will reply 3, 5, 4, and you will know what is this number. Easy to process. Tell me about is way more difficult to analyze on your perspective. And again, you can have open question, you can have a quantitative question. When you have quantitative structured questions, always either give a rating of these questions. As I told you, from 1 to 5, how hot is, where 1 is too hot and 5 is too cold, how hot is this room? What's the temperature of this room? And so you know that if I reply 2, it's towards the too hot. And if you don't say this, you have to ask what they mean for 4, 3, what the number they gave, so that you are sure to understand properly and then mix maybe cold with hot. Always aim at direct, concrete, specific question. Use the language of the people, not your language as a computer engineer or whatever. But if you're talking with teenagers, use the teenager language. And if possible, try always, but if possible, try the interview with a smaller group, maybe a group of friends, just to be sure that the questions are understandable, like for debugging in a sense. So you're sure that everything is clear and you can proceed. So here, there are a few examples of open-ended questions with no specific topic. So the first one is one, if you are, for instance, want to explore a typical day of a doctor in a hospital, you can say, tell me about your typical day in that context. That's open-ended question, unstructured, qualitative. You can go in deep as you want, but that's an open question. That's like a good question to start an interview with. Another kind of question that you can use also is tell me 3, 4, 2, number like that, good things about X, and 3 bad things about X. So when asking this kind of thing, it's always important not to give only the positive or negative option, but ask for both, and ask for a number of things that you want to know about. 2, 3 things. Why not just saying, tell me some good things or some bad things to you? Why is it better to say, give me 3 good things about and not some good things about? Well, I would say, well, some could be, I will ask just 1. So it's easier to maybe provide 1 than not provide 3 or 2 instead of 3. Some, not necessarily the best one, not 1, some. Could be 2, 3, 5, 11, just, no, up to you. But why some is in this case less optimal than 3 or 4 or 2? No, it's not necessarily. Laziness can have a part of it, but it's not the full story. No, but even you've asked 3 things, maybe it's not the full picture either, no? Any idea?
Maybe you want to look like you're in control, like you know there are 3 things that are not going good, so tell me those 3.
No, not necessarily. No. Think of more than 1 person.
Okay. So we can
Yes, and why giving the same number of things is good. Yes, giving the same 3 good things, 4 good things, not 1100 good things, but 2 or 3 good things give the same number of answers to everyone. So you avoid that you have the person that loves to talk and will take 1 hour to reply to these things and will list 100 different things that work, and the other one that is maybe not interested, lazy, and just to say 1. And then we have to put together all the answers and analyze them. You have some people that answered 1 and some people that answered 100. And how do you combine them? Which weight do you give to them? First. Second, asking good and bad things with a number that is typically the same number. So if you ask you, tell me some things that happen in Politecnico in your experience, I can bet, like money, that you will tell me mostly negative things, right? Because that's human nature, it's not something really. So forcing people to say, okay, yes, tell me 3 bad things, but also 3 good things. Force them to focus on both ends, and also not to give you like 3 good things and 1 million bad things, but also keep them in a small and appropriate consideration, because after, it's not just an exercise per se. After, you have to look at this answer and do something with that. So the higher quality you have, the better you can proceed and move on. So good question, good answers to a good analysis of them. So when you have good things and bad things, always try to put both. Other open-ended question: what has gone wrong with, let's say, the application recently? How did you cope? And what else? And it's a nice end question in a questionnaire, in an interview, is what else should we have asked about? Did we miss anything? Tell me if I missed anything in this conversation. So these are examples of an open-ended question that works well at the beginning and at the end, mostly. of an interview, and in the middle you can be more precise, more focused on what you are interested to know, specifically on your topic of interest. Like I was saying before, from a scale to 1 to 3, to 1 to 5, where 1 means X and 5 means X, what about this? So now, these slides list bad questions to avoid. Let's see what kind of question to avoid. Let's see one of them. This is a bad question. Why is X, feature X, are things that people do, important to you? Why this is bad? There is the definition of why is bad, of the category of this kind of questions, but why is bad?
Isn't the answer written like it's a leading question?
That's the category of the issue. This is a leading question. What means a leading question?
Because
What
you are
means?
leading the person who is answering to think in a specific way.
Yes, you're leading the person. You include in the answer, in the question, or suggest in the question the answer. You decided, for whatever reason, that feature X is important. Maybe it's not. But you are asking why it's important to you. And so you have to motivate why it's important. And if it's not important, you'll lose the opportunity to know about it. So a better question could be, how do you, from 1 to 5, how is important this feature to you? Where 1 is not important at all and 5 is full important. Or tell me about feature X and how you use it, so that you can understand if it's important or not important, useful, not useful, other dimension of it. This is a leading question, because the question includes or suggests a possible answer. What would you like in a tool? That's a bad question, because people are expert in their domain, not in design, not in development, not in creation. So what they would like in a tool is not their job, is yours. You want to understand how they use that tool, maybe. What's not working, what's working well, to extract what they would like in a tool, but without asking them. What do you like in X? This is also a category similar to the leading question. That is assuming question. You assume that you like it. That's your assumption. This is still leading, but it's also assuming. Maybe it doesn't like. Maybe it's not important as before. So this is still a leading question. In particular, this is assuming question. You assume something from whatever reason. Also, this is to avoid. What will you do in a hypothetical situation? What will you do if this happens? Also, bad question to avoid. People cannot really imagine the complete environment you had in mind or any unusual situation they never experienced. It's just opinions at that point, opinions on their own background, on their own knowledge. So this is another category of questions to avoid.
But we see this kind of question the most, like the last one, like thinking hypothetically. Most of the surveys there, like what would be if this was like this?
This doesn't make them right.
Yeah, but I'm saying like this is the most common like bad question probably.
Yeah, could be. But this is again, well, let me open a parenthesis. There is a technique that is called imagination exercise, where you ask the user to do exactly this. That's a technique, and you should be prepared to handle the situation. You as the person that is applying this technique, not in an interview in general. But yeah, in an interview, just one-to-one, asking like this is just not really useful for you to move on, to to analyze, to synthesize, to come up with some solutions, some problems, etc. Okay? So this is another bad question. Let's continue. How often do you do X? That's not a bad question per se, but it's a bad question because we are really bad at estimating things, times, etc. If I ask you how many hours you spent on Instagram yesterday, or pick your preferred social media application, the number you will say will likely be very different from the actual number that your phone will tell you, either in positive or negative, but still different. So we are bad at estimating. So when possible, instead of asking you how many hours you spent on Instagram, it's better to say, can we look on your phone how many hours do you spend on Instagram? So you have the precise number. So if you have the opportunity to look at numbers, log analysis, stats, etc., he is looking for for the number. It's better to do that, to ask for quantitative data than not my estimation of that, because human beings are typically bad at estimating things in one way or another. Binary questions are another kind of question to avoid, because a yes/no question gives you no information, no useful information. After you know that something is positive, and then you have to ask why, or how, or something else. So ask it at the beginning, instead of asking, do you do this? Yes, no, how? So if you know that they will do it, like if I have to interview students, I can assume in that moment the students study at a certain point for exam, so I can ask, how do you study? So binary questions are generally to be avoidable. In some cases, if you are not sure, you can use it just to avoid doing leading questions. So do you do this? I'm not sure. Do you do this? Yes. And so I'm asking other questions. But I am asking other questions, not stopping to the yes or no. Tell me a story about you. Why this is a bad question? To general. A story about you. About what? Today, yesterday, 3 years ago? Which topics? To general. So avoid general questions. How do you reach the decision? Did you meet? Did someone decide without you, etc.? These are bad questions for two reasons. One, because it's not a question of three. Better to give one question, time to answer, and then follow up. And second, these are again similar to the leading question as before. You are suggesting possible answers. Maybe they reach a decision, so it's reasonable to say, how do you reach the decision? But then you are giving option. You meet. Someone decided without you. You're giving options. So avoid giving option. People know what's going on, and they will tell you. And if not, they will ask you a clarification, and you can provide the clarification. But not give possible answers, because otherwise people will pick one of the possible answers if it is not really true or really accurate as definition, be similar to what happened to them. So ask the questions and wait in silence for the answer. In a way, similar to what I do when I ask you something and there is silence in the room, I'm waiting for some of you to answer. That's similar to what happens in an interview. You ask and you give people time to think and to answer. And most of the time, the second answer of the same person is more interesting than the first one, after they fought for a little bit. So this is about interviews and questions. So What's really important, again, in an interview are three things. One, identify people. Second, schedule a time and place to do it, and start with large open question, and then move towards what you want to know, and avoid bad questions, and also always try to understand what you want to know. Think at the possible answer you would like to hear, and build the questions on top of them. Avoiding bad questions and using open-ended question, using quantitative question from 1 to 5, blah, blah, blah. Or looking at the phone or the computer data or whatever artifacts they can provide you. So if you're asking about a process or something that people do, and they do it on paper or on a computer, tell them to show you the things they're using, so that you can also see what they're using. So this is interview. Survey, as I was saying, are still interviews. They are, well, cost-effective and potentially reaching a wide audience with respect to interviews, because with one survey you can cover multiple people, and an interview instead you have to ask one person at a time. Also in this case, to setting the goal, to setting the question of a survey, you first should define the statistics, the answer you want, and then build the kind of answer you want, and then build the question backwards, so that you know what's your goal, your endpoint. Surveys are typically good for a shallow view of a topic, not for a deep analysis. That's interview instead. Of course, survey has fully structured questionnaire, so you cannot ask follow-up questions at the moment in an unstructured way. You can have biased data if it relies on user memory or on sensitive issues. And in surveys, it's also difficult to find a representative target population, because you point to a large number of people, so you want to have the population, the target user, equally represented in your population, in your users. So you want 90% of males and 10% of female, for instance, and 0% of other genders. You want maybe a distribution that is similar to the one that you have in the, let's say, Italian population, or in the Politecnico population, etc. So that's more difficult. The survey structure start with, similar to the interview, start with the purpose of the surveys and the expected time, 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, etc., so that people can know if they want to start it now or later. You can have one or more section with a title, and you also have a background information about the person that is filling out the survey, while limiting the number of mandatory fields to a minimum, as little as possible.
What does stratification, what does it mean?
Oh, stratification means what I was saying before. If you do a survey to all Politecnico students, you have to stratify the survey, to design, to deliver the survey to a number of students that is proportionate with the actual population. So if you do a survey for the entire Politecnico students, but you also send it to second-year engineering student, you are not doing a good job in finding the target population, because you are leaving out all the non-engineering degree, or the first year, all the bachelor students, or the PhD students. So you're not stratifying your population, your survey distribution properly. Okay, that's a difficulty in survey, to get a number of answers that is proportional, significant for the population that you actually have.
But maybe only for example, engineering students do the survey not the other.
But if you want to do a survey for all the students, you have to find a way to reach out all the category, let's say, all the types of students at Politecnico. If you do a survey for engineering students, that's another story. But if you want to talk about all the students, you have to reach all the students in some way. Okay, which are the example of the background information? You can imagine like age, gender, native language, education, experience with computers, it makes sense, experience with specific software in a computer, if it makes sense, job responsibility, personality style, etc., etc., etc. Information about the user that will tell you how you can interpret the answer to the next question according to this, or to categorize. The answer, maybe all the younger people replied this way. That's also something you can do only if you have background information. As an interview, you can have open-ended questions. Actually, in survey, you typically have a very small number of open-ended questions because they are more difficult to analyze, and also people don't really like to write a lot of text in open-ended question. What you typically have in surveys are closed-ended questions with one or more possible choice. So checkbox, select one, select all that apply about a topic, because they are easier to reply and also easier to analyze them. And you typically have ordinal value or nominal values. So ordinal values from 1 to 5, for instance, and nominal values like which is your city of origin. So you have a finite, big as you want, but finite set of answer, and you pick one of them or more of them. So which is the degree you are studying in at Politecnico. A series of answer, finite, is not infinite, and you pick one of them. Then of course you can have measurement scale, but I hope that you know the difference at the second year of the master degree or between nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval ratio, and absolute scale. If you don't, you can look in the slides. One kind of ordinal scale that is useful for interviews, but also for surveys, and also when we will see usability testing, is Likert scale. Likert scale are an ordinal scale that asks for the level of agreement about a statement. And extreme values are very rare to be selected in a Likert scale that takes the name from the inventor, that is this Likert. So you typically have 1 to 5, 1 to 7, 1 to 9, where the extreme are the agreement, I fully disagree, I fully agree. It's too hot, it's too cold. The extreme, 1 and 5, 1 and 7, 1 and 9, and in the middle, there are the other values. Most of the time, they are 1, 5, 1, 7, 1, 9. The vast majority is 1, 5. And with 5 level, 1, 5, you have strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, strong agree, with whatever sentence you ask people to answer. In some cases, you don't want a neutral answer, and so you remove the middle one, and instead of having 1 to 5, you have 1 to 4. But in those cases, you are making a specific choice to not having people saying, I don't care, or I don't have an opinion. You are forcing people to take a stance with all the pros and the cons of this decision. So most of the time, again, you have 1 to 5, including the neutral, because it's a reasonable question to have. I don't have an opinion on this. So 1 to 5, with 3 is neutral. And these are widely used scale that's called Likert scale, to ask agreement or disagreement about a statement. In general, this is very true for survey, but in part also for interviews. In a sense, if possible, use 2 simple questions instead of 1 complex question. So separate what you are interested in. Avoid the negative words in the question. Try to pose the question in a positive way. And remember, as like leading question, etc., that biased questions solicit biased answer. So keep your assumption, your bias out of the questions so that you can try to have not biased response after. Okay? And this is about survey. We are not going to ask you to do surveys, but since some topics like Likert scale is actually useful for interviews as well, I presented them here. And then who knows in the future what you need. Any questions so far? Okay, so interview, survey, contextual inquiry. Contextual inquiry is, as the subtitles say, observing while interviewing. So it's a mix between observation that we cover on Wednesday and interview that we talk about today. We ask you in assignment 1, if possible, to conduct a small observation or a small contextual inquiry. Maybe with a subset of the people you have to get more information on the actual things they do. But the major things will be about interviews. So contextual inquiry is, of course, inquiry of context, where the context is the fact that the research, the questions, the activity take place in the user natural environment as they would do normally. So it's not in a different place, it's just where they work, where they live, where they go to the gym, whatever. And the inquiry instead is you watching people as they perform their activities and at the same time ask for information. Have people talk while they do the activity to understand how and why they do what they do. So people are observed while they perform tasks and talk about what they are doing while they perform them. So it's really observation mixed with interview. The difference between the three previous methods is that here participants have a more active role. In observation, you look at them. In interview, you ask questions to them, and they reply, and then wait for the next question. Here, people are leading the session. Like, in a way, a craftsman and the apprentice. So people are the craftsman, and you are the apprentice. It's like you want to learn what they do so that you can do it again on your own. The idea is that, again, I'm looking at them, I'm listening what they teach me so that I can learn how they do things, why they do the things, in which order, in which timing, with which tools, etc. So this is a mix of, again, interviews and observation. And of course, if you want to learn something, you can also ask, but why you did this? Can you slow down? Can you repeat this? All these kind of things to observe better what they're doing. So it's a mix, again, between observation, which instead is more looking at what happens, and interviews, that is asking things to people. This is while doing one, also doing the other one. Since it's a mix of them, you can reuse the same things we covered for the observation and the same things we covered about the interviews. So also here, you have to avoid leading questions. So there is nothing new in that perspective. But of course, there are differences between contextual inquiry and interviews and contextual inquiry and observation. So versus interviews, the advantage of contextual inquiry is that in interviews, people have to recall what they did and then explain it to you. But they are not in that moment anymore. It's like if I ask you what you did yesterday at 3 p.m., you will be able to probably answer, no? Well, with a little bit of effort, maybe. What you did yesterday at afternoon, let's say afternoon. Studying. What you were studying?
Big data.
Big data. For how long?
Maybe 2 hours.
2 hours. And using which tools or books or?
My PC and my tablet.
And no other, like you didn't use a smartphone?
I try to not use it.
You try to, but you use it. So if let's use this as an example. If I didn't ask, her answer will be, oh, I use my computer and my tablet. But actually, she also used a little bit the smartphone. So with an interview, if you don't ask, you will never know. Because it's based on people's memory. And she has some memory, other people doesn't have memory, so that's another issue in general, probably. In contextual inquiry, instead, you go to a room, you were studying at home, to a room, and you, in a way, got taught how she was studying. I say, okay, see, now I'm opening this, and I'm drawing this, I'm reading this paragraph, and I'm doing this, and then I'm opening the tablet, and you see things, because you are in the context, and she can tell you what she's doing in that moment. So you're not detached from the process for the moment, but you are in the moment in the process. Of course, you need to go, everyone, to a room. That's not easy or doable in some cases, but still, that's also similar to an observation. So people attempt to summarize what they do, but some details can be missed. Some details about tools, but also about reasoning, motivation, mental models are left out because it's recalling by memory. And so you can only obtain a certain level of understanding of what happens with an interview, but not with contextual inquiry, because you are in the process. You see what happens. You can ask questions in that moment. So while people cannot maybe remember or miss some detail, people can easily talk while doing stuff, describing what I'm doing while I'm doing. That's easier for people. And you can also see interruptions, see workarounds, see whatever is going on, even illogical processes or strange things. Versus observation, on the other side, you get an in-depth thought process of people, because you can ask questions, people can vocalize what they're doing, so you understand how, not only how things work, but why they're doing these things. Of course, observation works better in some cases. For instance, when the activity does not require in-depth thoughts. If I need to observe him designing a login page for a web application, probably an observation is more than enough. I don't really need him to explain, oh, I'm putting a username here with an input field, and a password with an input field, and then a button to say submit. I probably don't need to understand why the person is doing this, because it's pretty standard. So in that case, observation can work better, is less invasive, and also observation works better when people cannot or should not be interrupted or distracted. Again, doctors in hospital is a very valid example. If you want to observe a doctor doing surgical operation, it's not at a certain point you say, sorry, can you redo it again? Of course not. Or say, what they're doing, can you explain me? So that's not a good moment to do a contextual inquiry, but you can do an observation and an interview after the facts. So in this case, when you cannot or should not interrupt people or distract people because they can commit errors, you typically do an observation followed by an interview immediately after the action is done. So you can still look and understand what's going on and then ask things after, also based on what you observed in the previous 10, 15, half an hour. So risk and downside. So contextual inquiry is a more advanced technique with respect to interviews and observation. So it has some risk. One risk is that people go into interview mode. So they are just answering questions instead of doing the actual thing. Sometimes, like before when I said, if I ask you things about Politecnico, you will give me negative things first. It's the same. It could be a show and tell of things that doesn't work instead of the actual process. It's more like, this is not working, this is not working, this is a problem, instead of show me what you do without giving a negative or positive value to this. Especially if you are there to do a better system or to improve the system. They will tell you what's not working to them instead of showing how to do things. And you are missing opportunity to understand and really improve the system instead of doing bug fixing. The other risk is that you introduce biases. You bring your notion, you bring your opinion in your questions, in your answer. So you disagree with something that people said. So this is introducing bias and obtaining, let's say, a negative answer, a not natural, ecologically natural answer observation from the context. Or you bias the user. If you have some leading question or some interpretation of data, maybe the person would like to be friendly with you and say, yes, I agree with you, don't want to contradict you, but maybe this person wants to, just don't want to be nice. That's also a factor to include. And this is, of course, much more, this is present in every of these methods, but much more in observation and in contextual inquiry, because people do and talk about what they are doing with you observing and trying to learn and trying to interfere and trying to ask questions. So it's more, there are more possibility for this to happen. Okay? Any question on this? Okay, so this closes the, let's say, theoretical part about need finding. What we are going to do now before the break is for me to introduce assignment 1, and then we will do a break, and then we will start with the exercise on need finding after the break. Okay? So let me stop recording.